Hi, my name is Desirae Simpson, and I'm going to talk to you about armyworms today. The movie Poltergeist made the phrase, "They're back," famous. If you watch the movie, the ghosts were first mistaken to be friendly. It wasn't long before they showed people how unfriendly they really were. Well, Missouri farmers are now repeating that same phrase that Carol Ann from the movie made famous, but they're referring to friendly-looking little worms which can destroy field and forage crops before anyone knows they're even around. I'm talking about armyworms. I just learned what they were this year, but they're not strangers to the farm around here. Out of 4 species, our area mainly battles with the true armyworm in the spring and the fall armyworm. After our local farmers felt defeated by their attacks this spring, well, guess what? It's fall, and they're back. The spring of this year, compared to other record-breaking years farmers have had in the past when armyworm outbreaks were awful. Countless numbers of female moths snuck in and laid their eggs in the grassy fields. About 41 to 66 days later, we were seeing droves of the adult stage caterpillars. I found this article in the South Missourian newspaper, and it shows a picture of a true armyworm. And Dr. Wayne Bailey, a forage crop entomologist with the University of Missouri, explains how to identify them. I'll let you guys look at this. There are 3 dark stripes down the back of the green and tan worm on each side. There will be orange lines that run from its head to its tail. They aren't furry like a lot of caterpillars that I've seen. They do have several legs, but the legs near the tail on both sides will have dark triangular spots on them. There can be 2 to 3 generations of these per year. Here's another. Sarah Kenyon, who is the agronomist in our area, working for the University of Missouri Extension, put this article in the paper last month and wants people to know that fall armyworms are being found. This picture of the fall armyworm looks like a lot of the picture I just showed you of the true armyworm, but there is a difference. Look for the 4 black spots on the body of the worm near the tail area instead of on the legs, like where we find them on the true armyworm. Both of these worms have a tan-colored Y on their head, which also makes them unique from the other types of worms or caterpillars. The moths, which produce the fall armyworm, come in from the Gulf Coast area and are usually around the end of June and takes about 35 or more days to cycle. My research found there are 2 other types of armyworms, and they are yellow-striped armyworm and the beet armyworm. They aren't posing the threat the other 2 species I just talked to you about. They also have markings which set them apart, and to identify the yellow-striped armyworm, look for thin yellow lines that run down the row of spots down their back. The beet armyworms have a dark head, and the body is green and black with black spots on both sides behind the head. Both of these moths are hatched from eggs laid by moths too, and grow adult stage caterpillar in 36 to 40 days, usually around in May. The yellow stripe can have 3 to 4 generations per year, and the beet armyworm can have 2 generations per year. That's a lot. When the armyworms march, they can eat their weight on farmers' gold, and by that I mean their crops and pastures, which were meant for their livestock. Around here, a lot of farmers lost entire fields of fescue, Bermuda grass, and other grasses. Corn, wheat, and cotton are other crops that they can devour in the blink of an eye too. The armyworms should be scouted for every year. Sarah Kenyon warns farmers to get out in their fields and look for signs of eggs or the worms that they find any, they should be taking steps to get rid of them if they find 4 or more square foot in the square foot area. Usually if that many worms are found, the worms have already started feeding on lower leaves and seed heads, and you can see the damage to the plants. Scouting in dawn and dusk of the day for true armyworms is the best time. They don't like light very much, so they will burrow in the ground or hide under thick grass during the day. That is until the true armyworm reaches the adult stage, and then they don't care if it's daylight or dark. Farmers should be looking at their crops and fields for the pesky things daily until the lifespan of the worm is met. On K-Country 95 radio station, the other day I heard the announcer quoting a news release from Sarah Kenyon, and she had said she had reports of the fall armyworm ranging from new hatches to the adult stage, and people were still seeing the moth, which meant this wasn't going to be a short-lived problem. Right now, the fall armyworm should be scouted for until we get a hard frost or flooding rain. This type of weather is the only thing that will kill them, other than spraying the pesticides, or they are attacked by a natural parasite or virus. Controlling armyworms with a chemical spray requires you to buy insecticides, and most of the insecticides require a person to have a pesticide license. People who don't have a pesticide license can get the training at any county extension office, according to the University of Missouri Extension website, and it only costs around $12, so it's not that expensive. The entomology and agronomy specialists have provided a list of the chemical sprays used to kill these armyworms. Here is a list. I have got this list from the extension here in Oregon County, and some of the insecticides on the list are products like Mustang Max, 7, and Warrior, just to name a few. Farmers already suffered and lost valuable crops in fields this spring. And if they had anything left after the true armyworms, the drought conditions made things a whole lot worse, or finished off what the armyworms started by totally killing the plants and grasses. A miracle happened towards the end of August in the form of rain, which we really needed. Brown, burnt fields and pastures turned green once again. Livestock must have felt like they had died and gone to heaven. I know I did. They began grazing the pastures, and farmers prepared to cut and bale the fields for the much-needed hay. And just like in the movies, another sequel has come along. So now that I have shared the information on how to identify the species of armyworms, where to look for them, and the ways to control them, get out and scout for them, because we are hearing people repeating the not-so-popular words from the horror movie, "They're back." Thank you.